There are moments in life that feel like endings, when the weight of what was stolen from you seems too great to bear. You look back and wonder how you're still standing. After all the betrayal, after all the silence, after all the people you gave everything to, only to watch them take and walk away as though your heart was never in their hands. They didn't just take things. They took your joy, your peace, your voice, and sometimes they took your will to believe again. But my dear friend, I tell you now, this is not the end of your story. This is the chapter where God steps in with holy vengeance, wrapped in gentle mercy. This is the chapter where everything the enemy meant for evil, God transforms into the soil for a mighty return. This is the chapter where heaven opens and restoration comes not quietly, but boldly and publicly, just as your pain once did. There's something sacred about divine restoration. It is not rushed. It is not hurried. It is not performed on a timeline that suits our longing hearts. It unfolds when God knows the soil of our soul has deepened enough to hold what He's about to pour in. And oh, when He restores, it's never a copy. It's always greater, better, stronger, unshakable. Have you ever looked at the aftermath of your suffering and asked, Lord, was any of this loss necessary? It's a question many faithful souls have whispered through clenched prayers, and heaven always answers, not always in words, but in what comes next. God is not in the business of random pain. He is in the holy art of turning wounds into windows. Every broken promise, every lonely night, every tear you shed that no one else saw, He did, and He kept count. Some people walked into your life not to add to it, but to take from it. And for a time it felt like they succeeded. But child of God, you must know this. Nothing taken from a surrendered heart goes unnoticed in the courts of heaven. Nothing they rob from you is left forgotten in God's economy. For every lie spoken about you, there is a truth coming to lift your name higher. For every opportunity stolen, there is a door about to open that no man can shut. He paid His price in life. For every opportunity stolen, there is a door about to open that no man can shut. For every joy dimmed by betrayal, there is a peace being stirred in secret that will shine so brightly, it will blind those who once tried to dim your light. You thought they were writing your ending, but they were only turning the page. And what they failed to see was that your story was authored by hands that do not tremble, by a God who never forgets. He doesn't restore with leftovers. He restores with increase. He doesn't return what was taken in the same measure. It comes back in waves. Pressed down, shaken together, and running over, you are entering a divine chapter, not because you forced it, not because you chased revenge, not because you begged people to see your worth. You're entering it because you chose to stay pure when you could have turned bitter. You chose to remain kind when cruelty could have overtaken you. And you chose to wait on God when walking away seemed easier. This is the chapter where your harvest arrives, not by your might, but by your surrender. Not by your fight, but by your faith. And though you've walked through seasons where silence from heaven made you question if you were forgotten, I tell you now with all the certainty of divine timing, you were not. God was preparing a table, and the same ones who watched you break will watch you rise. So do not think for a moment that the injustice of man can override the justice of God. Your losses were not wasted, they were recorded. And now He is moving. It is a strange thing, isn't it, that the moments where heaven begins its greatest work are not marked with trumpets or clarity, but with silence so deep it feels like abandonment. We assume that restoration will arrive with the fanfare of recognition, with the world applauding us for enduring what others never had the courage to face. But divine restoration is not theatrical, it's sacred. And sacred things often begin in secret. The silence you endured was not evidence of God's absence. It was the shelter under which the roots of your new life were growing. There were days you cried out and heard nothing but your own echoes. Nights where you asked God, why did you let them take so much from me? But what if the silence was God's way of saying, I'm not finished writing yet? When a seed is planted, it is hidden, it is buried in darkness. And yet, in that silence, it becomes something more. In the same way, what was taken from you didn't end you. It buried you into a soil of transformation. While you grieved the loss, heaven was preparing the gain. While you mourned what they stole, God was multiplying what He would return. We often want our healing and restoration to be visible and immediate, but God doesn't operate on human timelines. He is not rushed by our heartbreak, nor is He distracted by our enemies. He is focused on our becoming. And in order for us to become, sometimes we must first be emptied, stripped, left in the quiet long enough to learn to listen to Him again. There's a reason you didn't receive your restoration the moment they left. If it had come then, you would have attributed it to them. You would have thought their exit made space for your growth, as if they had power over your destiny. But God waited. He let you sit in the stillness until you no longer desired revenge, until your prayers weren't just for restoration, but for refinement, until you wanted not just to be vindicated, but to be healed. That's when God begins to move. When the world has forgotten you, when the ones who took from you feel untouchable, when your name is spoken in rooms you're not invited into, when your life looks quiet, but your soul is learning to stand again. This is where God begins, not with noise, but with nurture, not with applause, but with attention. And when He begins in full. God does not do partial healing. He does not give back with apologies. He restores with power. The silence that once tormented you becomes the sacred space where He prepares your return. You may not have seen the shift, but heaven has already signed the decree. This is the chapter of return. This is where I give it all back. So while others see the surface, God sees the soil, and in that quiet, invisible place, He is working. Trust it, because the loudest moments of your life won't be when people cheer for you. They will be the moments when God whispers, now, and suddenly everything begins to change. There is a lie whispered in the corridors of grief. The lie that what they took from you was the best part of your life, that their betrayal, their rejection, their selfishness cost you your only chance at joy. And if you believe that lie long enough, you begin to shape your future around a loss you were never meant to carry. You begin to live as though God has nothing left to give. But the truth is, what they stole was never greater than what God is about to send. You must understand this deeply. No one has the power to rob you of what heaven has authored. They may have stolen time, they may have shattered your trust, they may have drained your energy and tampered with your hope, but they never touched your destiny. Because your destiny is not stored in their hands, it is kept in the heart of God. And what God has stored for you cannot be edited by those who left you. So many walk through life with an invisible wound, grieving what they once had, be it relationships, opportunities, peace, or dreams. They replay memories like a broken record, trying to make sense of how things fell apart. But you are not called to be a historian of your own pain. You are called to be a witness of His restoration. The enemy wants you stuck in mourning so you never look up long enough to see what's coming. But God is not just going to return what was lost. He is going to replace it with what is better. What they took from you was temporary. Even if it felt permanent, even if it shattered your plans, it was still limited by time and purpose. But what God is sending in return is eternal in value, peace that surpasses understanding, joy that can't be explained, love that cannot be manipulated, purpose that can't be stolen. You see, God doesn't rebuild your life with recycled pain. He builds it with fresh promise. Sometimes He allows things to be taken only to show you that your trust was placed in the wrong hands, not as punishment, but as redirection. Not to break your faith, but to rebuild it on a stronger foundation. If He allowed them to walk away, it means they were not meant to carry the weight of your future. And if you still feel the sting of that loss, it only proves how deeply you loved. But don't let their absence blind you from God's presence. Finally, let us see what is revealed in their words. And when the presences blind you from God's presence, what's ahead of you is not a compensation, it is a coronation. He is not giving back to make it even, He is giving back to make it divine. What's coming will silence the memory of what was taken. What's coming will make you realize they didn't take the best, you just hadn't seen the best yet. You thought their exit left you empty. But God is showing you it left space for something far greater. You were not abandoned, you were cleared for increase. And everything that was taken from you, watch closely. It's about to return in a form more powerful, more peaceful, and more permanent than you could have imagined. It is one of life's most mysterious realities that God often begins His greatest works in the quietest seasons of our lives, when the applause dies down, when the visitors stop coming, when the phone stops ringing and the once buzzy noise of people fades into absence. There you sit, wounded, misunderstood, and forgotten. And yet, it is precisely there that God does His most intimate work, not in public view, not with lightning flashes or booming thunder, but with the gentle stillness that only those who have suffered deeply can truly understand. The world will often confuse silence with abandonment, but God does not need to announce His arrival with noise, because He is always present. The shepherd doesn't shout to the sheep in the valley. He draws close and walks beside them and makes them want silence to point them back to Him. That you might wonder why God would let silence stretch across your days after such pain. Why, after they took so much, your dignity, your kindness, your love, God wouldn't immediately rush in to make it right. But the ways of God are not like the ways of men. He is not reactive, He is redemptive. And redemption requires stillness, because it is in stillness that the deepest wounds are accessed. A surgeon does not operate on a moving body, and neither does God restore a restless soul. During this season, when no one seemed to notice how much you were carrying, God was noticing everything. The quiet tears, the brave face, the moments you could have retaliated but chose to forgive. The times you could have cursed your story but instead whispered, "Lord, I trust you." That kind of endurance is never wasted. It becomes the soil of divine restoration. And while the world saw your silence as defeat, heaven saw it as surrender. There is something sacred about what happens when you stop begging for answers and start trusting the author. When you stop demanding explanations and start listening for direction, that is when the silence begins to shift. Not all at once, not in a dramatic turnaround, but slowly, like a seed breaking open underground, hidden but alive. And what once looked like the absence of God begins to reveal itself as the presence of His preparation. In the silence, you began to hear differently. You began to see yourself not as the broken one, but as the becoming one. The absence of their voices made room for His. The loss of what was stolen made space for what is coming, and the loneliness taught you a truth that noise could never offer. You are never truly alone. The stillness became sacred, not because it was painless, but because it was purposeful. So many people rush to be seen, to be understood, to be restored in the eyes of others. But those who are most powerfully restored by God are those who choose to let Him do it in silence first. Because what is built in secret becomes unshakable in public, and the restoration that begins in silence will echo louder than any applause ever could. It will be deeper, holier, permanent, not born out of reaction, but birthed out of divine timing. You don't need the world to notice right away. You just need heaven to say now. And when heaven says now, even the silence must give way to glory. There's a sacred sorrow that clings to a person after something is taken from them unjustly, whether it was love that was never returned, trust that was shattered, or years poured into someone who never valued the weight of your loyalty. The theft of the heart leaves a different kind of bruise. You walk around not just with pain, but with questions. Was it all for nothing? Did they walk away with the best part of you? Is this how your story ends, robbed and empty? But the truth that quietly breaks through the grief is this: what they stole will never be greater than what God is sending. Never. Because their theft was limited, temporary, born from human selfishness and blindness. But what God gives, He gives in fullness, in permanence, and with divine precision. What they took was not your destiny. It was a chapter, not the conclusion. God does not sit idly while others dismantle what He has written over your life. Even when it seems like they got away with it, when they're smiling, living and flourishing while you're still stitching together what they tore. God is not blind, He is patient, because what He restores isn't simply a replacement of what was lost. It's a transformation of who you are. You are not being repaid with the same kind of love, the same kind of peace, the same kind of opportunity. No, what's coming is better, stronger, undeniably God orchestrated. That's the thing about divine restoration. It's never about symmetry. It's not they took this so God gives me back that. No, it's they took what was fragile but God gives back what is fortified. They wounded the part of you that trusted easily, and now God builds in you a discernment that protects your heart. They stole time, and God is now giving purpose. They broke your name with lies, and God is preparing to lift your voice with truth. So don't curse the season of loss. Mourn it, feel it, but then let it teach you. Let it show you that no person has the power to delete what God has decided, because what's coming will not resemble what left. The love you receive will not come with conditions. The friendships you form will not require you to shrink. The blessings you walk into will not be built on manipulation. They will be drenched in peace. You thought they took too much, but they only removed what God already planned to replace. You thought the damage was irreversible, but you forgot the healer walks beside you. And what's more, you thought the story was over. But child, this is the chapter where restoration begins. This is the page where God writes in bold ink, "What was taken shall now return." Pressed down, shaken together, and running over. There's a moment in every broken story where silence becomes the loudest sound. It creeps in after betrayal, after abandonment, after loss. When all the noise that once surrounded your life falls away, and you're left alone with only your heartbeat and your questions. This is the moment most people fear. The stillness, the quiet days where nothing seems to be changing, where healing feels too slow, and where the memory of what was taken haunts the corners of your mind. But heaven has always done its best work in the quiet. And the quiet doesn't mean God is gone. It means God is building something too holy to be rushed. We forget that God is not a showman. He is not performing for spectators. He is a master craftsman who works deeply, not loudly. The world applauds the visible, but heaven honors what is done in secret. When your heart was aching, when your name was being destroyed, when they left with no explanation and took your peace with them, you wondered why God didn't intervene, why he didn't shout down from the skies and stop them, why he didn't rescue you instantly and restore what was broken with lightning speed. But restoration doesn't begin with noise. It begins with stillness. It begins in the places where only you and God exist, where no one else sees the tears you cry or hears the prayers you whisper under your breath. In that sacred stillness, God is not punishing you. He's preparing you. You see, the kind of restoration God does is never cosmetic. He doesn't just return what was taken. He transforms the vessel that was robbed. If he answered too soon, it would feel like a transaction. But when he answers in the fullness of time, it becomes a testimony. That silence you feared, it was the womb of your breakthrough, the soil where your faith grew deeper roots, the space where you began to hear his voice more clearly than the voices of those who left you. It is in the silence that God separates your identity from your pain. He reminds you that you are not what they did, you are not what they said, you are not the broken version they left behind. And while they thought their absence would crush you, God used it to craft you. What they walked away from, he stayed close to. What they mistreated, he began to mend, and all of it, every quiet morning, every tear-stained night, became a part of the restoration process. He doesn't need to announce when he starts restoring. The healing will show in your peace, the increase will show in your favor, the redemption will show in your strength, the applause will come later. But the real work begins here, in the holy hush of waiting. So don't despise the silence. It's the sound of heaven drawing near, and while you thought nothing was happening, everything was. The chapter of restoration begins with whispers, not applause, and you, beloved, are already on the first page. What they took from you was real. It hurt. It changed the way you looked at life, at people, and maybe even at God. There were days you held your breath just to survive, nights when your chest felt too tight to cry. You gave your love freely, your loyalty fully, and your trust completely, and they treated it like it meant nothing. They didn't just walk away. They robbed you of your softness, your laughter, your sense of safety, and for a long time it felt like they had the final word. But what they stole will never outweigh what God is preparing to give, because what they took was touched by human hands, temporary, limited, fragile. But what God gives is touched by eternity. It is not simply a repayment, it is a divine return with interest. You must understand this. Their betrayal didn't catch heaven off guard. Their rejection didn't delay your destiny. If anything, it aligned you with the deeper, richer blessings you never would have reached had you stayed entangled with people who didn't know your worth. You think they left with everything, but they didn't. They only took what could be taken by force. They couldn't steal your calling. They couldn't destroy your purpose. They couldn't erase your anointing. And now, after all the breaking, you are standing in the very place where God is about to rebuild you, not with leftovers, but with glory. Not with apologies, but with abundance. They thought they won, but what they didn't see is that God always saves the best wine for last. God is not giving back what they took. He is giving back better. Not the same kind of love, but one that heals instead of harms. Not the same kind of friendship, but one that lifts instead of drains. Not the same kind of opportunities, but ones born of favor, not fear. And all of it is coming not because you chased revenge, but because you trusted God's justice, because you chose silence over retaliation, because you let Him fight battles you could have tried to win yourself. You are walking into a chapter where you will say, I lost things I thought I couldn't live without, but what I gained is peace I never knew I needed. You will see doors open that no one can shut. You will see new relationships bloom from the soil of old heartbreak. You will wake up one morning and realize they didn't take everything. They only made room for what God was planning all along. There comes a sacred turning point in every life where God does not simply restore what was lost. He crowns the one who endured the loss. Because there's a difference between a refund and a reward. What was taken from you may have left you feeling like the victim of a great injustice, but God never meant for your story to end there. He saw everything. He recorded every silent tear. And what He is preparing to give you now is not merely a replacement. It is a divine crown woven from your pain, your patience, and your faith. For too long you've been treated like someone disposable. For too long your heart has been passed around, misunderstood, underestimated. You gave what was pure and received what was cruel. You trusted those who used your vulnerability as an advantage. You spoke life into those who only spoke behind your back, and you were left with nothing but memories of how it all fell apart. But God never left you in that shattered place. He stood at the edge of your heartbreak and whispered, "Hold on, I'm not done yet." This chapter is not about revenge, it's about righteousness. God isn't interested in simply exposing your enemies. He's more concerned with elevating you. This crown He's placing on your head isn't just for show. It's proof. Proof that the one who was once dismissed is now divinely distinguished. Proof that the one who was mocked is now marked by heaven. Proof that the one who was overlooked is now overflowing with grace. God is not just returning what was lost. He's restoring honor. He's wrapping your name in favor. And He's doing it in such a way that no one will be able to deny His hand over your life. Some of the people who wounded you will see your rise and not understand how you made it through. They will wonder how someone they tried to crush is now carrying glory. But that's the mystery of God's justice. It confounds the arrogant and comforts the broken. He doesn't just lift you from the ashes. He anoints you while you're still carrying the scent of the fire. Because you didn't quit, you didn't curse the process, you didn't surrender your soul to bitterness. You waited on Him when others would have walked away from faith. And now, He is lifting your head and placing upon it a crown forged in heaven's own fire. There are blessings coming to you that carry the weight of justice. Not just grace, but vindication. Not just mercy, but manifestation. Because your story isn't just about survival, it's about resurrection. You are not rising back to the life you had. You are rising into a life no one thought you could ever have. This is the chapter where God says, "Now they will see what I saw in you all along." And so you walk into this new season not as someone desperate for healing, but as someone crowned with it. You walk in knowing that what was taken did not ruin you, it refined you. That what was stolen did not strip you, it strengthened you. And that what seemed to be the end was only the beginning of the chapter where God restores everything and then crowns you in front of the same world that watched you suffer. So here you are, standing at the doorway of a new chapter, one not written by the hands of those who hurt you, but by the hands of the one who heals. This is where it all shifts, where what was broken begins to glow, where what was stolen is not only returned, but returned with interest. This is not just another season. It is divine retribution disguised as restoration. All that was taken from you, all that was whispered about you, all that was twisted, mocked, or silenced. God has been watching, and He never watches without responding. The delay was never denial, it was preparation. And now, as the ink dries on this new page of your life, you will begin to feel the weight of His justice moving, not with vengeance, but with victory. You will laugh again, not because life is perfect, but because grace is present. You will love again, not because people have changed, but because you have healed. You will walk into rooms that once rejected you, and this time you'll walk in with peace, with favor, with fire, and you won't need to explain how you got there, because the evidence of God's hand will be all over you. Let this be your reminder. God never forgets what was taken from His children, and He never restores halfway. He restores fully, boldly, publicly, with a joy that humbles those who once mocked your pain. This is the chapter where God gives it all back, not because they said sorry, not because you forced it, but because He decided it was time. And when God decides it's time, no force in hell can hold back what's coming.